Good evening. It's cold, it's wet, it's rainy, it's horrid outside, but it's lovely and warm and brilliant in here. Stay with Gazza and I. We're going to take you through everything that happened on Lower League FA Cup Special. Yes, hello. Lovely to have your company with us this evening. We're very much looking forward to what I presume is going to be a slightly more condensed show than perhaps you're used to on a Wednesday evening, certainly perhaps than even we're used to. We might actually get some beauty sleep on this fine Wednesday evening, but we shall see. Nonetheless, we're here just to run the rule over the final 10 that were left in the FA Cup. 10 has been whittled down to 2. We're very much looking forward to just sort of discussing how they got on and hopefully putting a few people into the limelight. But whilst we're waiting to do that, let's say a massive hello to Gareth, who's with me again. 2 shows, and it's been us just 2 for a little while. So we're kind of getting used to this, just you and I, us talking heads.
I know, aren't the people lucky that they get to see us 2 every week, eh? No, I think, the FA Cup's a special competition, so always relish the opportunity to talk about it. Unless it's the week after we've been knocked out, then less so. But other than that one occasion, which is will happen every year, then I'll happy to chat.
Absolutely that. And as we say, there were 10 teams in the FA Cup as we hit the 4th round. And those 10 teams were, of course, Swindon, Bournemouth, Oxford United, Middlesbrough, Chatham, York, Burnley, London Bees, West Bromwich Albion, and Hull. Those 10 teams fought valiantly. We knew there was going to be one Tier 3 side. We knew there was going to be one Tier 4 side in the next round due to the fact that there were all Tier 3 and all Tier 4 matches. And we will be looking at those in the second half of this show. I suppose it would probably be nice and convenient just to get it out of the way, because obviously the biggest result, and by biggest I mean literally in terms of goals scored by any one side, sadly was against Swindon Town. So Charlton 10, Swindon Town 0, Gareth, which is not the best of scorelines to have. And I think actually a bit of a surprise. I think if you were going to sit there and start talking about where these scorelines were going to come in, it doesn't really show the way that Swindon, I think, have played over the course of the last few months. Unbeaten in their league, 100% record in the WNL Division 1 Southwest. Annabelle Colston scoring 28 goals in 20 games. She's been on fire. And their run had been really quite good. They beat Plympton away 8-0 with Annabelle Colston scoring a hat-trick along with Libby Davis. Holly Essen scoring as well with Libby Whalen. So a nice, simple third qualifying round for them. They then had their first round match against Dulwich Hamlet. They won that 1-0 in the only round that Annabelle Colston didn't score in, with Taylor McDonald scoring there. And then after that, Annabelle Colston only seems to like scoring in threes. They beat Oxford City 3-0 away from home with Annabelle Colston scoring a hat-trick. And then, of course, their last game they actually played. So they played this FA Cup match. The game before was in December, the last game they'd actually played. And that was the FA Cup game against Leafield, which they won 3-2 away from home with Annabelle Colston scoring 3. So she was superb. She did play the game. She was there. I can only assume she didn't get as many chances as perhaps she would have liked to. It was 4-0 at half-time. It was 8-0 by the 90th minute. They still popped in a couple in injury time. But, I mean, a proud run, I suppose, really, for Swindon. Something they can be proud of. But, yeah, it felt a little bit harsh, I think, for a side that's been doing so well in its league to be dispatched quite so comfortably.
Yeah, and I think the overall kind of premise for a lot of these sides is going to be, we're always going to get knocked out at some point. I think there's not a single National League side that's going to think, let's go and get to Wembley. It's the dream, of course, but everyone in that league is always going to be thinking our main focus is going to be the league. Let's have a good FA Cup run. Let's kind of have the attention and the finances and the kind of the experience for both like the fans and the players and the staff and the club as a whole of having a good run, but we're going to go out at some point. And I think there are a lot of sides from that last weekend that got that draw and think this is probably where we're going to bow out. And I think that's probably the same for Swindon. I also think that you think we just want to make a good account of ourselves. We just want people to see what we're about. We're probably going to lose the game, but there's ways and means to lose these games. I think losing 10-0, without having seen the game, I don't know if that scoreline is reflective of the performances. But you look at it and you think, well, Charlton were good and Swindon maybe just weren't quite at the races. Whether or not that is the case or not, I don't know. But that's the impression you get when you look at a scoreline like that. And I think that's tricky. Like you say, they've had a nice, strong run so far. It is a run they're going to be able to be proud of, that they are going to look back at the end of the season and say, this is one of the highlights of our season. But ultimately, for them, it's about how they respond to that with the league, isn't it? Because ultimately, they're in a title battle. They're in that title challenge with Bunny Fields, and if they come out on top of that at the end of the season, then it's going to be viewed as a successful season regardless. And that 10-0 blip it is just going to be that. It will be a good experience for him played a professional side, a championship club. But ultimately, their focus is going to be on the league. They've had a fantastic run, a run they can be proud of. But their focus is and should be on winning that title.
I mean, it's not really anything to do with the FA Cup, but I will mention it anyway because we highlighted that as a potential match. Swindon, they've got the WNL Cup game coming up against AFC Bournemouth, who we know are just one tier above them rather than two tiers above them. And we said that could be a really good match to watch with Swindon doing as well as they're doing and Bournemouth doing as well as they're doing. We will get to Bournemouth literally next, I think, in this conversation. And so this might be a nice segue into them. But do you think that would probably still put Bournemouth? I mean, they were obviously going to be favourites anyway, but do you look at it now and think that maybe Bournemouth won't just be favourites, but heavy favourites, or do you still think Swindon will have a bit more about them in that match?
I would still have Bournemouth as strong favourites. Whether there's a difference between that and heavy favourites, I know that's for other people to decide. But I still think there is a chance that an upset can be caused. I think what we see a lot of the time with the Women's FA Cup, and Stuart's mentioned this when he's been on the show in the past, is there's not a huge amount of magic of the cup upsets. I think you're so unlikely to get Macclesfield beating Crystal Palace of the Men's FA Cup happen in the Women's FA Cup, just because the resources and the funding and everything is so vastly different from one level apart, let alone 3 or 4. So yeah, I think there's more of a chance of them coming up against Bournemouth. We'll touch on Bournemouth shortly. I think they got a real taste of that difference in quality between the top of Tier 3 and WSL. Likewise, Burnley. Similar outcomes for those two against Manchester clubs. So yeah, I think I'm still looking forward to that. I still think it's probably one of the games of the WNL Cup /Plate. Going forward, and we'll keep an eye out on that. But yeah, I think it probably does indicate that there's just gaps still isn't there, and that's to be expected. I don't think any of these results really are overly surprising to anybody, or shouldn't be.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I suppose that the gaps are wide, and I suppose another reason why the Bournemouth one might be perhaps a little bit more interesting in that respect is because Bournemouth were in the same division last year. So it will be interesting to see just how well they've grown. But yes, I think I would agree with you. But looking at Bournemouth, they had a tough tie against Manchester City. That probably a big tie, the sort of thing they would have wanted when you're travelling through the FA Cup. That's exactly what you want, is to put out a big side at home. It's a nice day getting people into the ground. They chose not to. have it at a bigger ground. They were still in quite a diminutive ground compared to the ones perhaps we are used to seeing. And as a result, they perhaps didn't get as many people through the doors. Perhaps maybe they could have. I don't know. But a 6-0 defeat. And again, another side that's unbeaten, although in this case they have drawn a few. So 9-1, 3 drawn. But top of the Southern Premier, looking incredibly good there. Sophie Quirk with 17 in 19. Jenna Markham scoring 12 in 19. So they've got some good goal scorers there as well. Their run through, just a close little 11-0 away win in the first round against Millbrook, with Jenna Markham and Sophie Quirk scoring 1 in that, with doubles for Amelia Newton and Jess Hennessy, Georgia Wilson and Kenny Thompson, which is really, really good for them. Gemma McGuinness scoring 1 as well. They had a 7-1 away win in the second round against Leyton Orient. Perhaps notable, yes, for Quirk scoring 2 and for Alina Cole scoring 1 and Jenna Markham scoring again, but also 3 own goals, Gareth. The first 3 goals in that game were all own goals, which I can imagine if you're Leyton Orient must have really grated, which is bad enough being in a situation where you lose, but when you put them in 3-0 up before even them putting the ball in their own, putting the ball in the net, that is a bit of a worry. And then, of course, in the third round, a 5-0 win over Fulham. Again, Quirk scoring. They got another own goal in that one. 4 own goals they've had in those 3 games in the first 3 rounds. Molly Barron-Clark scoring as well alongside Jenna Markham and Amber Trewick. So, again, good for Bournemouth in terms of getting the big guns to come and visit them. Hopefully it would have put some more money in the coffers, but I mean, this result was never, ever, ever in doubt, was it?
No, I don't think so. I think the main thing to mention, I think, is that there was an immense disappointment. I think what I know from Bournemouth fans, having kind of spoken to a couple of them, they wanted this game to be at the Vitality. They wanted this game to be a real showcase of the club. And the club opted not to have it at the Vitality Stadium in order to protect the pitch, which, it feels like a convenient excuse, really. Trust me, I know all too well the difficulties with protecting a pitch and having numerous teams on there, and everything that comes with that. However, this is a Premier League standard pitch, with professional full-time groundsmen that are going to be there all the time. I don't think that having one additional game played on there, when you have all the resources that Bournemouth have with, the kind of they are a Premier League club. I think that game for me should have been at the Vitality, especially given that their usual home of Ringwood, it couldn't have been played there because Ringwood didn't meet ground grading for this round of the FA Cup. So they had to change venues anyway, and so opted to go to a venue that, I'm not 100% sure, but as far as I'm aware, there's no real connection to that club. I don't think they've not been there. If they've been there before, it's not been this season, so it's not somewhere that's their usual home. It's not the kind of main club home either. It just felt like a really what could have been a real celebration of the club's success and everything over the last 18 months just felt a little bit flat because of that. And yeah, I don't know whether that's because they wanted to be able to cap the amount of City fans that were going to be there, or to try and increase the kind of atmosphere for the Bournemouth fans. I don't know. But yeah, I feel sorry for the Bournemouth fans really, because a real opportunity for them to celebrate everything that's happened over the last however long 18 months that I've been aware, but I'm sure success has been on for longer than that. And yeah, it wasn't to be and didn't come to pass.
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, it is disappointing. It's a good chance. You would hope. I mean, again, a smaller club myself, you would really hope that if you get these big matches, that the stadiums that the men play at regularly would be made available, because because of the fact they are such big occasions. It's not often, and that you get the chance to play these games against recognised teams that you see on the TV week in week out. So yeah, a bit of a shame there for Bournemouth, but that is where it ended for them. We will talk about some other ones, but time to look over at another side that were unbeaten in Burnley. Burnley having won 10, drawn 2, obviously not losing a game in the Northern Premier, where they are currently second. Their top goal scorers, Charlie Chadwick with 17 and 20, Amy Kelly doing well with 9 and 15, and Millie Ravening as well with 9 and 19. Their starting lineup against Manchester United had 6 ex-Manchester United Academy players in it, which I found fascinating at the time. And they had not conceded a goal up to that fourth round. They'd beaten Blackburn just 12-0, which I think is the biggest win of all of the teams that we are discussing. A ridiculous number of goal scorers in there, which makes it very difficult. But Claudia Mummery Walker did get a hat-trick, not for the first time there. But some other big names, you got Maddie Robinson in there, Olivia Wilkes, Charlie Chadwick did score, Amy Kelly did score, Heidi Logan got a couple, Brooke Cairns, and of course Emma Jane Siddle as well. So 12 goals from there. They then played Norwich, which was the side that put my team out in the first round. A great win for Burnley there, 4-0. Chadwick scoring again, as well as Siddle and Kelly, with Alethea Paul scoring the fourth one there. And then a 7-0 win at home to Peterborough. So all 3 of their games were at home. So the game against United being their first away one. But again, Charlie Chadwick scoring. So she scored in each round. Yana Daniels scored. Charlie Doherty. Ravening got one. Mummery Walker scored a couple, as did Siddle get in one. So again, very difficult for them to come into the fourth round and really do anything. Obviously, we had the chance to watch that game. Quite disappointing for Burnley. They weren't able really to get going. They never really troubled the United defence. Is it too glib, I suppose, to say, it was an enjoyable day for them, an opportunity to go out there and test their skills against some of the best best players in the division, in the league, in the country even? Is that the positive that they need to take away from that, and the fact that they managed to score 23 goals without conceding on the way to that? They've got to try and look at those positives, haven't they? Because again, the result wasn't really in doubt.
Yeah, I think it's tricky for Burnley. Ultimately, again, similar to Bournemouth, their attention is going to be on that league. They're in a battle with Wolves, and there's an opportunity for Wolves to go up as well. There's opportunity for Burnley, for Bournemouth, for whoever wants to kind of take that opportunity and grasp it. I think the interesting thing with the the Burnley side rather, is that they've got kind of a lot of a real pedigree within that squad. You look at people like Charlie Chadwick, and she played for Liverpool under 21s previously. You've got players kind of throughout the squad that have played at a really high level, and so it is United a day out for them. No, I don't think so, but it's exactly the kind of games they want to be testing themselves in. If they're going to want to get push on and get promoted to the Championship, which they obviously do, then it is a good opportunity for them to recognise and take stock of where they're at. I think one thing I think it's safe to say again about Burnley this season is they have scraped some wins, but getting those wins is all that really matters. But then if you're kind of scraping wins and riding your luck, it might be harsh to say, but if you're kind of riding your luck a little bit against some sides in your division, when you come up against a side that has won this competition recently, you kind of expect to have a rough day. And yeah, I don't think that they'll be disappointed with the result. I think they were disappointed maybe not to have kind of got any sort of grasp on the game, but I don't think that they'll be going away with any real huge surprises. I've said it already. Their attention is just going to be on getting that league, and trying to put as much pressure on Wolves as possible and see if they can, nick the title, or kind of go up through the playoffs.
Absolutely. If you just saw the fist pump there, that's because the mighty Manchester United have just made it through against Arsenal in the Sandwich Cup. And as the world knows, that makes me a very happy man. So unlucky there to Arsenal. Do we know the Chelsea score? Is that finished?
I shall have a quick look for you.
I will let you have a look at that whilst I introduce the next one, which is, of course, the mighty West Bromwich Albion, another side who played incredibly well. They had a big game against WSL side Everton. They did lose it 5-0. They were fifth in the Northern Premier, where their fortunes not so great. 1-4 drawn, 3 lost, 5. Their goal difference is in negatives, which isn't ideal. Phoebe Warner, their top goal scorer, was 7 in 19. Ellie May with 5 in 17. And they had quite a good run to the fourth round. A 3-0 win against Solihull Moors away from home. Zoe Creaney, Marley Rhodes Andrews, and an own goal. Lots of own goals popping up in these games. They then had a 2-0 win against Cambridge United at home with Ellie May notching and Amia Hammond-McLean. And then in the third round, a 3-0 win away to Leeds with Meek Robinson, Ellie May, and Mia Sorrentino. Now, I didn't get the chance to chase up on that, but Mia Sorrentino, obviously the player who had to go off injured against Everton. Of course, Everton, I think, had Holmgard injured as well in that one, and then that turned out to be an ACL. So a couple of really bad injuries in the game. It was one of those that was quite difficult to watch in that respect because they were, really not nice injuries. I think Sorrentino was stretchered off, which was even worse there. But again, a really, really good performance, I thought, from West Brom. They did try, they did give it an effort, but again, Everton just a little bit too strong for them. For West Brom, it's got to be about focusing now on the Northern Premier, surely. And yes, Chelsea are through, we see. I'm sure you're about to say that, Gareth, but Claire's come through for us via the text as well. So it'll 1-0, so 2-1-0 wins. It'll be Chelsea versus United again. My God, we've turned into City and Arsenal. But there we go. City and Chelsea, sorry, having the quadruple. But yes, West Bromwich Albion, how do you think they did?
Yeah, a risk of sounding like I'm repeating myself quite a bit. You come up against WSL opposition, it's always going to be tough. We've talked before and even earlier on this show about the levels there is between different leagues and even kind of different positions within the leagues. I think for West Brom, the kind of real kind of key for that is going to be that they were on TV. They were picked for television, and they kind of got to showcase themselves. Attendance of 411, I believe. So that's going to be one of their strongest attendances of the season. So there is a lot there for them to kind of take stock of and be proud of. But again, they're relatively comfortable mid-table, but if we know anything about how relegation battles can go at the moment, things can change in the blink of an eye. So they are going to kind of want to be looking to maybe take that money, reinvest it somehow, see what they can do, and push on and make sure they are secure in that league for next season.
Yeah, I think, like you say, for West Brom, that is absolutely what they need to be doing. Now, there was a side in the Northern Premier who did manage to get some goals, because obviously the ones we've looked at so far all lost to 0. But Hull did try and put up a bit of a fight in their game against WSL2 Birmingham. Hull 7th in the Northern Prem. Their goal difference not ideal either. -10 for them, but they won 4, drew 2, lost 5 so far. Their top scorers, Hope Knight, 17 and 18, and Jess Tugby Andrew with 5 in 19. So bit of a difference there. A lot of their goals coming from Hope Knight. They had a good run again into the fourth round. All away wins, a 4-1 win away to Halifax with Catherine Hamill, Sophie Hayward, Hope Knight, and Maya Akril scoring the goals. Then a 7-1 win against, get ready to start ticking off, Stourbridge, 7-1 away from home there. Maya Akril scoring, Izzy Gig, Hope Knight just knocking the four in, and Jess Tugby Andrew as well. Maybe that's the reason John's not here this evening. Third round, a 2-1 win away to Mancunian Unity with Knight and Tugby Andrew scoring the 2 goals. So pretty good there. They were 4-0 down at half time. It went 5-0 immediately after half time. They did pull 2 back through Sophie Hayward and Ellie Tanzer. A 6th goal was scored though. It was unlikely that they were going to come back, but a bit of fight there from Hull, and nice to see a side from lower down giving them a little bit, probably not a massive scare, but a little bit of a scare, and certainly making them have to go out there and try and turn the tide again.
Yeah, and I think, it's tricky, isn't it, when you're comfortably down at half time, there's kind of 2 things can happen. One is that you kind of just sort of think it's done, the game's done, and what is it that we can do? I think the only thing you can do in situations like that is at halftime, well, we want to go out there and we want to win the second half. Let's go out there, let's get 1 goal, let's see what happens. Let's get another goal, let's see what happens. And, at 5-2, Birmingham were always comfortable. But if 5-2 then becomes 5-3, well, Hull are really going to start to feel something, and are going to start to feel confident, because if you can start to claw things back particularly closely, then football's a funny old game. I think back to when we were knocked out of the competition, when Withenshaw were knocked out against Huddersfield. We were I think 3-0 down at half time. We felt like the game was over. We scored 2 goals in the second half, and you sort of felt like when the second goal went in, there wasn't very long left at all, but you sort of felt like huge amount of momentum, and every time we went forward, you felt that we were going to score. And we had opportunities to level the game and take it to penalties. Didn't take them, but and I think you just have to kind of go out there and do what you can. And there would have been a scare. There would have been conversations on the Birmingham bench of we need to make sure that we don't mess this up. And they didn't. They went out there and they scored another goal. So, there's stuff there for Hull to take. There will be positives from that performance, and there'll be things they want to work on. And ultimately, again, they've had a fantastic run. They had a tough time in the league last season. They feel more confident and comfortable this year. So, I think there's progress across the board for them. It is. Just about kind of enjoying these experiences as much as you can when you get beat, and kind of taking that money on, reinvesting it, and for a lot of WNL clubs, I think the purpose of this is to just have that experience playing in the FA Cup and create these ties, these games that you're not going to get to play very often, and kind of having these separate experiences, and kind of really pushing on and showing what you're about.
I think you're right, absolutely spot on, and I think, good to see Hull, like I say, fighting back there and giving it what they could, and nice, very nice indeed. Now another side that had a bit of a tough game was Tier 4 London Bees, third in the Division 1 South East. Again, not doing too badly in their division. 1-8, drawn 2, lost 3. They've got some interesting goal scoring records there. Millie Isherwood, we've seen her before, and she was a bit of a hero in the FA Cup last season as well, but 17 in 22 for her. And then Betty Larkin with 9 in 22. They had, again, a pretty good run through. Colchester, they played in the 3rd qualifying round, winning by just 10 goals to 1. Amy Dern scoring 2, Millie Isherwood scoring 4, Aria Hyle scoring as well, and Lee Whitelock with 2, and of course Betty Larkin getting 1 as well. In the first round, they faced Barking at home, which they won 5-3. Amy Dernigan, Brian Fowl, Millie Ishwood scoring 2, and Samantha Gabion scoring as well. Second round, 5-0, their only clean sheet of the tournament, win at home to Portishead, again with Aria Hull scoring, Gabion scoring, Ishwood scoring 2, again Larkin scoring. You're getting the hint as to how the goals have been going in this tournament for them. And then a much tighter game against Dartford that they won in extra time. Really difficult game there for London Bees. Now, of course, Dartford also aside in the Division 1 South East, really fighting hard for it. But Samantha Gabion and Millie Ishwood both scored. Then Shamoy Campbell got sent off, which wasn't helpful either. So they're down to 10 players. And then in extra time, right early on in the 30 minutes, Brian Fowl scoring the goal. And before you know it, they were through against Dartford. They then had to go and face Liverpool. Now, Liverpool haven't been having the best of times in the WSL, but it was always going to be tricky, a side in Tier 4 facing a WSL side, no matter how poorly their form is going. Again, without wanting you to have to repeat yourself, really difficult. But for these guys, as a Tier 4 side, much in the same way as Swindon were. Swindon were playing Charlton, which is a big name, and it is WSL too. But to have the opportunity to have a name as big as Liverpool come to your ground, and a WSL side as well, and former WSL winners and champions, that must have been, for London Bees especially, with their ground just by the Hive, that must have been incredible for them.
Yeah, and I think I said it probably on one of these shows at the start of the season. For me, my ideal FA Cup this year would have been get to the fourth round, draw a WSL side like Liverpool, and lose. Obviously, I'd rather win, but that if I got to pick how I went out of the competition, it would have been against a WSL side, Liverpool, or United, City, etc. For me, that would have been, if you'd said you're going to go out in the fourth round, what do you want to happen? Nice, easy games up to then, drawing the massive clubs, go out. What a fantastic experience for everybody. I think the only shame for Bees is that it was at home. I think sometimes when you kind of go away to some of these places, that adds to the experience. And they would have obviously liked the scoreline to be closer. But yeah, I think that's the kind of game that when you all kind of start these competitions, you think, what do you want in this competition? You think, I want to draw United, I want to draw City, I want to draw Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea. I don't want to see Spurs drawing Leicester, or I don't want to see Chelsea, Crystal Palace. We saw that in the league last season. Arsenal, Villa, great. We get to see that every week, or twice a season. I want to see things like London Bees against Liverpool, because there's been no real magic of the cup in this round in terms of upsets, but there's been some magic in terms of experiences that have been had, and yeah, I don't think there's kind of much more to say. Similar to what other things have said, focus will be on the league, and they're not going to be too disappointed to be out of the competition. Might be disappointed about the results, but ultimately, it's been a fantastic run, and this is the time it ends.
Absolutely that. Yeah, can't disagree with a single word you said there, young Gazza. So those were the 6 sides that were playing against higher opposition and got knocked out. There were 4 teams left remaining, and obviously it was 2 against 2, as in 2 Tier 3 sides and 2 Tier 4 sides. So we'll start with Tier 3. Why not? Something good to do. We're going to look at the losers in the Tier 3 battle first. So Middlesbrough were away from home. They had a game against Oxford United, which they lost 3-1. Now, Middlesbrough 6th in the Northern Premier, having won 4, drawn 3, and lost 5. And again, a negative goal difference, which we always try and look at because it gives you a rough idea as to whether they're doing quite well in front of goal or not in those games. But they do have Becca May Ferguson with 7 in 17 and Lauren Robson with 6 in 20. Becca May Ferguson scoring the goal against Oxford United there. Their run to the 4th round, another side that did not concede a goal, a 4-0 home win against Cheadle, with Olivia Watt, Erin Nelson, Robson and Ferguson both scoring as well in that. 3-0 at home to Northampton in the second round, with Abby Holmes scoring 2 and Robson scoring again as well. In the third round, they knocked out Fylde 3-0, another own goal to add to the list, along with Abby Holmes and Armani Maxwell scoring. And then, of course, came the game against Oxford United. Now, obviously, we will talk about Oxford, but Oxford are 5th in the Southern Premier, so it was South v North in that game. The Southerners on this occasion coming out on top. But again, a tough one for Middlesbrough. Got to be quite hard, really, if you're in a one like that. It was obviously going to be a tight game. You've got to feel a bit sorry for Middlesbrough, really, to be out of there, because that probably was a bit of a coin toss, that one, really.
Yeah, I think it would have been a game that you go into it and think we can get through this. We can get into the fifth round. And I think both teams would have thought that it would have been relatively unknown what they were going into, I think. But both sides would have felt like this was a winnable game. And it was Oxford who came out on top. I don't know whether Middlesbrough went down the day before. I don't know when they travelled. If you go down on a day, that is a long journey. It's often a long journey to other places in the Premier Division, Northern Premier Division. Obviously, adding that extra couple of hours in onto Oxford as well makes it a long day. If they went down the day before, then that's a really kind of a top experience there as well, or just something different they're not necessarily normally used to. But yeah, I think Middlesbrough would have felt as though they could have got through. They could have made the fifth round. They could have been part of making history. They were part of the first ever televised first round game when they beat Cheadle. I still think they will look back at this cup run as being a really fond one that historically is going to be, a hugely successful run for them. But on the day, Oxford were just the side that got the job done, and in the end, a 3-1 win. Relatively, maybe not comfortable, but it wasn't they didn't get through by the skin of their pants. They got through, and they're there on merit. They're in that fifth round. They've got the draw that they've got. I'm sure we'll touch on that a bit shortly, but yeah, kudos to them because they went and got the job done. Both the sides would have been up for it. Both sides would have felt that they could go and do it, and it was Oxford that went and did the business.
Absolutely that. And another side that were on the receiving end of a defeat was York City, again in the fourth tier this time. They are having a dismal season, really. 10th in Division 1 North, sat right on the cusp of the drop zone. 1-2, drawn 1, lost 7, a negative 21 goal difference. Katie Assel having scored 9 in 18, Ruby Watt having scored 5 in 17. It really, the FA Cup, I suppose, was for them a good opportunity to, I suppose, take their mind off of the fact that it wasn't going so well in the league. And this is certainly something that they have tried to do. Their other cup games having not gone as well as perhaps you'd wanted them to as well in the WNL Cup. So a bit of a tricky one for them, but their run to the fourth round again was not a bad one. We speak about Assel and Watt quite a bit there. West Disbury and Chorlton were the first side that they faced, winning 5-1 in the third qualifying round, a hat-trick for Katie Assel and a brace for Sophie Bentley. In round one, they played Leeds Modernians, winning 1-0, with Assel scoring the goal again. Then Wroxham, who are in the league that I work in, had a big, long journey all the way up to York, where they lost 3-1. Rosie Bell scoring 2 and Ruby Watt netting as well. And then Altrincham, a 3-0 away win there, with Assel and Watt both scoring 1 and Katie Varley scoring. Now, their goal difference shows that perhaps they shouldn't have been expected to score too many, and they didn't against Chatham Town. Obviously, we'll talk about Chatham in just a moment, but they're currently 4th in Division 1 South East, a completely different situation for them. They're in the process of fighting valiantly, but probably unlikely to do too well in terms of winning the title there. Whereas York fighting not to get relegated. You would have probably put Chatham down as the favourites in that one. But again, for York, a really good run considering the perils and the woes that they appear to be having in the Division 1 North.
Yeah, fantastic for them to go out and be able to kind of have it as an experience. They are, like I say, they are in that relegation scrap in the Division 1 North, York. And I think, come the end of the season, what we'll see is they do manage to stay up. You imagine Blackburn will be one side to go down with their lone single point at the moment. But if York are able to stay up and somebody else goes down instead, then they'll look back on this season as being one that was positive. There's a new manager in who has kind of been with the club for a while. I believe, I'm not sure exactly which youth side he coached previously, but has coached one of the youth sides, now has the first team manager's job. If he's able in his first proper season at the club to kind of keep them up and have this historic FA Cup run, then that's fantastic. I know that there was campaigns kind of previously for York to be one of the TV fixtures. That didn't happen. I think it's probably a case of resources at the facility for TV vans and things, which is unfortunate. But yeah, they'll be disappointed. Again, you look at it and you think it's as like for like as it's going to get in these competitions. This is a side that we'll back ourselves to go and hold ourselves to a high account. Again, a long drive down from York to Kent. So that's a long journey. Again, whether they did that the day before, I don't know. Whether they did that on the day, but it's one of these sides that then the chances of York drawing Chatham for many, many years is unlikely. So, a real one-off experience. This is kind of what the cup is about. Some of these experiences that you're not likely to get at all. And yeah, unfortunately for York, they weren't able to come through. But they will still look back at this run as being a really strong run. And if they're able then to use some of that money to reinvest to stay up or push on, then they will definitely look back on this with fondness. For Chatham, their first goal came direct from a corner. I saw that as I was posting our team sheet out from our County Cup game. That came off my Twitter feed. So kicking off with a memorable goal to start off their 3-0 win. And then, yeah, they did the job. They got to where they want to be. It wasn't a glamorous tie in terms of opposition for either of these two, or even kind of really Middlesbrough and Oxford. But they're through, and that's ultimately what they're going to care about. They're into the fifth round. I imagine that's probably where their runs, both sides' runs, are going to end. But they will have made history for that club, and those players will, you'd imagine, for quite a while, particularly at Chatham, be the side that went the furthest that the club has ever gone in the FA Cup.
No, you're not wrong. I think it's going to be very interesting, and now, of course, is a good time to lay to rest the sides that did not make it past the fourth round and start looking on the positive side, which is that we can still have a little segment of our show in after the next round of the FA Cup that will be designated towards two lower league sides. We've still got representation in the fifth round, and it will be both of them facing WSL2 opposition. Now, Oxford United, as we said, beating Middlesbrough 3-1, have had a really good run as well. They've got some interesting players. They're fifth in the Southern Premier League at the moment, having won 6, drawn 2, and lost 5. Emma Grace Thompson is their top goal scorer, 14 in 22, and Holly Jade Manders with 8 in 22 as well. They had, in their first round, a 1-1 draw against Hashtag with Reva Castley scoring. They had to win that one 5-4 on penalties. That took them through to the second round, where they defeated Luton 3-1, with Holly Manders scoring 2 and Naomi Bedeau scoring 1. They then moved on to the third round against Plymouth, which they won 2-1. Ruby Seeley and Emma Grace Thompson scoring as well. They were 1-0 down in that match, and they pulled it back around. And it was the same story against Middlesbrough, but their goals, and Claire puts it, all late goals for Oxford. They really were. Maisie Barker equalised for Oxford in the 85th minute. In the 90th minute, Reva Castley made it 2-1. And as I presume, Middlesbrough were swarming forward, trying to get the equaliser. Holly Jane Manders in the 6th minute of injury time made it 3-1. And after 6 balls were drawn out of the hat for the FA Cup 5th round, Oxford United's name was drawn. And then the 8th name that was drawn out of that hat was Charlton Athletic. And I can imagine not overjoyed with that one for a couple of reasons. One, because you would hope if you made it to the 5th round, you would get perhaps some WSL opposition for you there. But also because of all of the Championship WSL2 sides that you could have got, you've pulled out the side that are currently unbeaten in the WSL2, top of the league, 1-8, drawn 3, and looking like they are going to get promotion to the WSL anyway. So really tough for Oxford, probably unlikely to make it through unless Charlton have an absolute meltdown. But nonetheless, Oxford can be incredibly proud of being the last tier 3 side standing.
Yeah, I've not really kind of got huge amounts to add to that. I think it's, and without spoiling what we're going to talk about with Chatham, it's one of those draws where it's not a draw you think you're going to win, but then again, it's not also a draw that is going to kind of be lit up in neon lights either. So yeah, a real tricky one for them. When you look at some of the other games that have come out, Chelsea United, Merseyside derby, you've got a London derby in London City Lionesses and Spurs, and then you kind of get a really strong WSL2 side, which again is going to be a good experience. But you also sort of think, okay, this is where our journey is going to end. I hope they go out there and do it. I hope that both these sides go and cause huge upsets and make the quarterfinals. I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, not sure either of us can really, no matter how hard we try. And then, of course, for Chatham, having won 3-0 against York, 4th in the Division 1 South East, they had a 6-0 win away from home to Beaconsfield. Now, their top goal scorers, Amelia Woodgate with 12 in 19 and Ellie Jeffkins with 10 in 17. Very good against Beaconsfield. Carisha Iton scoring, Jess King scoring, then Amelia Woodgate scored, and I presume this is her sister, Madison Woodgate, also scored 2. So very interesting how she pops up in there sometimes. But Chatham have had a traumatic flight into the 4th round, I feel there. The first round against AFC Wimbledon, they drew 3-3 with Ellie Jeffkins scoring 2 and Amy Russ scoring the 3rd. They won that on penalties 4-2. They then had to face Exeter in the 2nd round, which they drew 2-2 with Ellie Jeffkins scoring both of those goals before winning on penalties 4-3. Against Sutton, a little bit easier for them. They did win 3-0 away from home with Atisha Charles scoring, Amelia Woodgate and Amy Russ. And then, of course, as they move into the game against York, another 3-0 win with Ellie Jeffkins scoring 1 and Amelia Woodgate getting 2. So Chatham had a really, really good run into the 5th round. And of course, there was 4 balls remaining as Chatham were getting pulled out. And those teams that they could have faced, they could have had a home draw, obviously, would have been the first thing they could have had. But they had the choice, well, not the choice, they couldn't pick, but they had Birmingham, Arsenal and Bristol City were the 3 sides left in the pot. Birmingham were drawn out first, and then so were Chatham, who I am sure were probably sitting there thinking, game against Arsenal here would be something special. But for them, they've drawn the team that are currently second in the WSL2. So again, a side that will probably be a part of the WSL next season. But as it stands now, second in the league, having won 7, drawn 1, and lost 3. So again, a bit of a difficult one for Chatham to take probably, and they've got to travel up there. In that respect, you would hope that with the fact that they are definitely going to get £20,000 as a minimum in this, 80,000 if they win, by the way. I mean, that is, if I was them, I'd almost be saying £5,000 per player if you can win this, because you just never know. You know you're going to be getting a lot more money as well if you lose in the next round. Plus, you should get the WSL side at that point. But you would hope they'd get a good coach journey up to Birmingham and come all the way from Kent and have a really nice team day out where they can really enjoy the experience. Hopefully, it'll be a good ground for Birmingham as well, and they get a good day. But that 20,000, if they don't spend it on a coach, is, you would think, for a team in Tier 4, sustainability for at least another season as a minimum, and regardless of what else is going on money-wise. What do you make of Chatham's excellent run this year?
Oh, they've really fought hard. They've battled, haven't they? Every opportunity to get to where they are now, and they've drawn a side that has real pedigree in this competition. Birmingham are, although they're a WSL2 club now, historically they've been right up there, kind of towards the top end of the WSL. Yeah, they fell on hard times, got relegated. But ultimately, they're a side that people, if you go back sort of 5-6 years, were a fantastic club with, real top quality players kind of coming through there. And so, yeah, this is a fantastic opportunity for those players. You imagine, I can't remember if the game was home or away, Barry, I apologise. But I think you said get a coach. So you imagine St Andrews, which is a fantastic ground to be playing at, and this is going to absolutely make the season. The finances that come in from it will, this is on that 20,000 for losing is on top of everything they've accumulated so far as well. So yeah, it's absolute stability. They can push on, they can build from this. They've got. It's not going to set them up for years and years and years, because that's unfortunately just not the way the game is at Tier 4 anymore. But yeah, a fantastic run, a great result. The money is going to be enough to make them secure. That they might reinvest it, whether that's into the playing staff, whether it's into the resources, whether that's in the pitch, who knows? But yeah, really happy for them. Envious that we're not walking out in the 5th round to fight for a spot in the quarterfinals, but how fantastic that a Tier 4 side is going to be doing that.
No, absolutely that. And we were hoping that we could have got somebody from Chatham on the show this evening, but they wouldn't have been able to join us because they were in the middle, as we speak, of a county cup game, which they are winning 3-0 against Aylesford. So that would have been something to be able to be on here whilst also running about on a football pitch. So there we go. So well done to Chatham. It's been a really good season for them. Well done to everyone who's been a part of the FA Cup runs this season. There's been so many stories, so many discussions, and that's what it's all about. That's why I love the FA Cup shows on No League Lingo. I think are among my favourites, because you do get the opportunity, as you said, to see things happening around the leagues that you don't always see. Different teams, different matches, and it really does just add, sometimes for the first time ever. So it just adds a different layer to it. So I think we're both agreed. It doesn't look like there is much of a chance for our low league times to make it into the next round, but you just never know. Stranger things have happened. That's the beauty of cup football. It only takes one goal to change a game. So we shall see. We shall see how they get on. It's been a great show. I did think we've made that last quite well there, Gareth, I think, considering. some really good chat there.
Well done, Will.
But I think it's because we've been enjoying it, which is always nice to do. I hope you've all enjoyed being part of the show this evening as well. We will be back next week, where I believe we are moving back round to tier 3 and 4 again. So it should be a WNL show, which we will be very much looking forward to. I don't think there's not much of an update on Cup and Plate, but I do think there are some Cup and Plate games happening this weekend. So there'll be some updates on that. And of course, we'll be looking at the state of play across all 6 leagues in tier 3 and 4. We'll be back on Monday as well. It's Sean's last show. So do make sure you come and join us to wave him off as he goes off to be a media executive with Deadpool himself at Wrexham. So it'll be lovely to wave him off over the hills and far away. So good job for him. Hope you can join us on Monday. If not, hopefully we'll see you back here next Wednesday, hopefully with a full complement of people as well. John promises us he's going to be here, so that's something to look forward to, but we shall see. Thank you for your company. Gaza, thank you very much as ever. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you soon.